And we're going to start with the topic I know that's hitting you at home. It's hitting a lot of Ontarians. We're going to start with the huge story in this province today. The Ford government and CUPE's education workers have yet to reach a deal in their ongoing contract negotiations. Now, the province is expected to pass anti-strike legislation probably sometime today, while members of the Canadian Union of Public Employees are ready to walk out starting tomorrow, in their words, until further notice. So this strike, as you can imagine, may leave many schools closed for in-person learning until a deal is reached. Let's talk about this strike news, how it's going to impact you, Miguel.
Well, I have two kids. I have a son who's in daycare, so luckily I feel like he's relatively shielded from this experience because he's not actually being educated right now, and it's a separate thing. But my daughter's in grade 1, and this is going to be the third year in a row, her only years of schooling that is once again disrupted. So obviously I have a huge investment here personally, but I'm a union member myself. I'm part of ACTRA, the acting union, and I stand in solidarity with unions. Yes, thank you. And I feel like I'm a little insulted by the way that the Ford government is sort of presenting this as a simple binary of, do you want your kids in class or not? It's that simple. It isn't that simple. It's so complicated. There's so many factors. And I believe that it's our right in the charter to have free and fair bargaining as an option and to withhold labor. And forcing people to accept whatever agreement the Ford government decides is appropriate is unfair. It's against our rights, and it drives me nuts. I mean, you know what CUPE workers make on average? $39,000 a year. I don't know if you've been anywhere recently, but $39,000 is not enough to live. It is not a living wage.
They're hearing from people who are going to food banks and constantly, so they're working full-time jobs and they're still going to food banks. And what they're asking for is only $3.25 more an hour. Is that's pretty much, that seems reasonable. I mean, I think most people. And
not even enough for Starbucks.
They have the money. They're sitting on a $2.1 billion surplus. Let's make no mistakes about it. They're sitting on that money.
Do you know how they got that money?
Yeah, but
you know this thing called inflation that we're all living through right now? All things, all goods, all services more expensive. When things are more expensive, guess what also goes up? The tax money that the provincial government collects from things that are more expensive. They have actually built up their coffers on the backs of people who are paying out more for perhaps an apple or a meal, and that is why there's an extra $2 billion lying around.
I mean, I'm like many people, feeling stressed today, and I'm not a single parent trying to juggle multiple jobs. I'm lucky enough that if tomorrow happens, I have a network of women, one of whom works from home and has offered to look after them. That is not everyone's situation by any means. And what really bugs me right now is that the government keeps spinning this as, oh, the teachers or the unions, oh, the education staff is doing this to you parents. They are trying to make everybody in this country put their head in the sand and just kind of accept, oh, this is a teacher thing. Would you go into teaching if you didn't like children? Would you go on a strike in November when you don't make your money and you, like, it makes no sense.
Before the holidays.
Before the holidays.
Yeah, seriously.
When you're already making not enough money. Like, it is illogical. Don't fall for that. Don't fall for that narrative.
I think that they're sort of going that route strategically because there are a lot of misconceptions about why people strike, about unions, and what this is all about. You know, there are, unfortunately, people out there who think that people who go on strike are just demanding too much money. They're lazy. They don't want to go to work. Nobody really wants to go on strike. Like, let's just disabuse people of that perception right now. Nobody wants to have their job in jeopardy. Nobody wants to not get paid before the holidays. Nobody wants to be in a cost of living crisis and have not a job, not being able to go do their jobs. Nobody wants children to be uneducated, right? The reason why they're going on strike is because they have no other option, that this has become untenable. We have to start understanding that.
Can we show some numbers?
Go for the numbers.
I want to throw up something that was put up because people were saying that asking for an 11% raise was far too greedy for this time of year. Education worker wage increases. 2012, 0. 2013, 0. 14, 0. 0. 1%, 2%, 1%, 2%, 1%, 1%. The government is sitting on billions. They're literally handing out checks to parents. If this isn't the year to get a catch-up raise, when is? So when we say 11%, it's because they're a decade or even 15 years behind the raise that any one of us would have probably experienced over the last decade. I want to pivot this to the fact that, and I've been Instagramming about this a lot because I am a former teacher and I have a lot of people who are there, but I'm also a parent. The people who we're talking about here is, let's get this very clear. The Ford government seems to always be targeting the union leaders. He's got a real problem with union leaders. And I'm not saying unions are perfect, but when he uses terminology like, we are trying to feather the nest of union leaders, when you want to punish a union leader, who you are actually punishing are the 70% of women in the lowest paying jobs that these union leaders actually represent. 70% of people in education who are making the $39,000 a year are women. So he wants to punish union leaders. He's actually punishing you, your sister, your mother, your grandmother. I've been getting so many messages, and I want to read one to you because people don't understand the money. They're trying, there's a bit of a bait and switch happening. And this woman wrote to me who's an early childhood educator, and she writes, I'm a single mom of a 4-year-old. I work as an early childhood educator with a French school board and a biweekly after-tax paycheck of $1,100. My rent is $2,195 plus utilities and other bills. I have a 2-year college diploma in ECE, early childhood education, and I also have a bachelor of early childhood education. I feel the underpay every single day. When it's paycheck day, I always want to scream loud and cry. I'm thankful I have parents who can help, or I'd probably be in a shelter with my 4-year-old. Just to say how most education workers struggle in this province. That's the real story. That's the real story.
We also have somebody who watches our show who wrote to us on Twitter, a parent. Palin said, as a parent of a kid just now coming out of his regressive issues due to COVID and online schooling, I'm scared to think of what will happen if he has to stay home again. But I believe in the right to bargain and strike to get a livable wage. Thank you for sharing that, Palin. I do think that echoes the sentiment of the parents on this panel. I am not one of them, but even though I am not a parent, this issue affects all of us. You know, working fair and working well keeps you healthy.
Yeah.
The healthcare workers and their unions are on side with CUPE right now because we all understand our worlds are all connected. Poor working conditions for teachers result in poor health outcomes for education staff, result in more strain for our healthcare workers. All these unions, all these people, all these workers are on the side of this situation and not on the side of this government. You have to ask yourself why. Because this government has also been going after nurses.
Yeah, also predominantly female,
caregivers,
marginalized people.
That's right. What's the common denominator, Melissa? What did you just say?
Women.
Yeah.
I want to say the notwithstanding clause, we haven't talked about it yet, but of course that is what is at stake right now. What is the notwithstanding clause? Essentially, I'm not a lawyer, but from my understanding, it is not only forcing the workers to take the deal that the government is giving them. It's a forced work legislation. It also prevents them from challenging this in court for the next 5 years, which means that they are forced to take this. In other words, if you weren't happy at your job and someone said, oh, you think you want a raise because you're worth more? No. I'm going to tell you what your value is, and you can't challenge that for the next 5 years. Ask yourself, if you're a parent who's really ticked off, and you should be, this is going to be a massive disruption, but ask yourself, if you care about the quality of your child's education today, and maybe over the next week or two, or however long this goes, get ready, ask yourself, what's the quality of education you want for your child for the next 5 to 10 years?
Seriously.
That's actually what's at stake. You won't keep, but you're going to drive these women out.
Yep.
Who's going to come in for that pay? We will not keep who's here.
We're not going to recruit anyone.
And we're not going to bring anybody in to replace them. If you think education sucks now, give it 10 years and see what your kid's education is.
It's the fabric of our society.
Schools raise our children.
Yeah.
We send our children there to be raised 40 hours a week. Every week.
Also, so that
we
other
should
people
value
can
that.
work.
Yeah.
Like the only reason why people are able to go do their jobs, schools set the schedule and the logistics of our lives. That's how important they are. But I don't think this government values that, as you said.
They make $165,000 a year.
Didn't they just get a raise?
Yeah, they gave themselves a 10% raise.
Yeah.
Wasn't that like $16,000?
Yeah.
So trying to kill a fly with a sledgehammer is how this feels to me.
Nasty.
Hey there, wasn't that great? Do you know where you can find some equally good content? Our YouTube page. It's filled with discussions, debates, and some laughs. Head there now, like and subscribe.